Okay, so we have 5 questions tonight. How can we cultivate hiri and ottappa? Do they come as a result from meditation practice or from intellectual thinking? If I refrain from looking at pornographic materials because I'm afraid it will hinder my meditation practice, is that ottappa? Of a sort. I mean, it comes from ottappa. Hiri and ottappa are tricky. I mean, it's a good question. But ultimately, I think the book answer is that they really come at sotapanna. A sotapanna has hiri and ottappa, but that's not really, that's a pure and a perfect type of hiri ottappa. Hiri and ottappa are a part of the world. Our sense of shame that leads us not to want to kill or steal or lie or cheat. I would say that's a stronger form of ottappa. Take pornographic material. I think, let's not look at pornographic material. Let's say, well, it is a good example because often it's just guilt. It's a sense of self-hatred and feeling bad about what you're doing, or it can be real fear. Like ottappa isn't fear in the sense of being worried or being afraid, which is why they're kind of tricky. Ottappa, I don't know. I mean, I guess in a worldly sense, it's very much related to a sort of a fear, but it's not the fear itself. It's that sense that this is going to be bad for you. And so, yeah, if you restrain yourself from looking at pornographic materials out of a sense that it is going to hinder your practice, out of a sense that the results will be bad, that's ottappa. If you do it out of a sense that it's if you focus on the act itself, hey, that's a problematic act. That act is involved with a lot of desire and clinging, then that's hiri. But so why it's a bit complicated is because for a sotapanna it's quite different. For the sotapanna, they know that it's bad. They understand why things are bad, why killing is bad, why stealing is bad. They know intrinsically, implicitly, why looking at pornography is problematic. But specifically why the desire relating to looking at pornography is bad. They know for themselves. I mean, they've seen how it's a cause, and they understand why it's a cause of suffering. So, how can we cultivate them? So there are different ways then. If you cultivate them by studying Buddhism, then that's a way of cultivating a sort of hiri ottappa. But it's much stronger when you practice insight meditation and see the things that are problematic. Is it useful to look for work? I mean, it's useful to live and survive. So whatever can keep you alive, keep you meditating. It's hard for me to answer that. Dear Ajahn Yuttadhammo, please don't call me Ajahn Yuttadhammo unless you're Thai. I object. If you're not Thai, I don't want to go by Ajahn, and I don't know why all these monks want to go by Ajahn. It's a Thai word. You can call me Bhante or Venerable, or just Yuttadhammo is fine, I don't mind. But I'm not Ajahn because I'm not Thai. Thai people call me Ajahn, that's fine. Ajahn Chah is fine because he was Thai. Ajahn Chah recommended his bhikkhus 80% practice and 20% Dhamma study as a healthy way. Would you agree, or do you consider the study of the texts as important as the cultivation of mind? 80-20, huh? Yeah. I mean, I would say studying the text is not really necessary at all, provided you have a meditation teacher, right? It's a bit more complicated. When you're doing meditation practice, forget about study. Focus on your practice and rely upon your meditation teacher. Ask them the questions. I mean, if you look at the suttas, one sutta was enough for one monk or groups of monks, right? They didn't necessarily get a lot of different teachings. Sometimes it was just enough to teach one thing. And you just look at a lot of the suttas, it's a lot of repetition. Sometimes it's about drilling the same thing in again and again. The problem comes, of course, that we're away from our teacher, so we use study as a substitute for a teacher. But because it's not directed to our specific situation, and it's not practical in terms of, hey, do this now, you got to read a lot more and study a lot more. Mahasi Sayadaw said, if you got no teacher, you're going to have to study the whole Tipitaka. And study the whole thing. And I think that was maybe a bit of a hyperbole, but it's a good sentiment. The less connection you have with the teacher, the more important it is going to be to study and have a comprehensive knowledge of the Tipitaka, because who knows what part of the Tipitaka is going to be of use to you. So you should study it all. It's not as good as having a teacher. It's just, unfortunately, you've got to do a lot of study in order to have all the answers to your problems. So a good teacher should have a wide knowledge of the Dhamma, should have studied a lot. Either that or be a Buddha. I think there's a problem when you have even an Arahant, but more likely a Sotapanna or something, who just teaches without studying. It can be a real problem, because their enlightenment, their understanding is not necessarily enough for everybody else. Only the Buddha had answers to everything. And a Sotapanna can still get things wrong, an Arahant can still get things wrong. So using the Tipitaka is invaluable for a meditation teacher. But that's more how it goes. It's a little more complicated than just, to me anyway, 80-20, 50-50, it's not quite like that. What's the best way to improve concentration and mindfulness? In meditation? How about in real life? Well, read my booklet. That's my opinion. Where are you headed in the future? Don't answer questions like that. Sorry. Is there a meaning of different colored robes? I've noticed you wear red, orange, and brown. No, there's no meaning to different colored robes. Samsara is absurd and disorienting to me. Even just looking around a quiet room is disturbing and strange. Questions like, is this normal? You see how often I get these questions? That's not really the question, the important question here. It's interesting how that becomes our concern. I'm not quite sure why it is that we always ask. I mean, it's understandable. It's probably how I would ask it. But let's forget about that. Is it normal? Not a useful question. So, being disturbing. I guess the question we want to ask by that is, am I doing okay? Am I on the path? Or is something wrong? Right? And it's much more interesting to look at our asking of that question, the fact that you're disturbed by it, the fact that you're worried about it. That in and of itself is interesting, and that's something that you should be mindful of, because that's what we're interested in, how we react to things. So first of all, this situation of being disturbed and so on, you're worried about that. It makes you doubt the practice. It makes you doubt your practice. That's interesting because that's a reaction to an experience, and it's an improper reaction. It's a stressful, it's a cause of stress and suffering. So what we're trying to do is learn to see experiences as they are. And so part of this question about is something normal, why we ask that is because we're intent on judging, good, bad, right, wrong, and we're trying to get to a sense that experience is experience, and to realize that it doesn't really matter what I experience, it's all arising and ceasing. And so the practice that I would recommend in this situation is to be mindful of that, of course, the worry, the doubt, and all that, but once you get over that, be mindful of the disorientation, be mindful of the feeling of absurdity. Samsara is not absurd, you are judging it as absurd, and that's a judgment. So look at that judgment. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you feel egotistical because do you feel proud of yourself because you are not caught up in it? Do you feel better than other people who are caught up in it? That kind of thing. There's a lot of different states potentially there that you should be mindful of. Can noting be done during the day? Of course. Yes, it can. What does Buddhism say about Kundalini? I get this question a lot. Buddhism doesn't say anything about Kundalini. It's not a Buddhist practice. A lot of people interested in Kundalini. Does it have something to do with the yoga craze? Everyone's into yoga now. I'm not laughing at yoga. It's fine. It's a different... I can't talk about such things because it's a whole other language. The language they use is totally different. Their view, their outlook, it's not the same outlook or the same view. It's steeped in Hinduism, which comes from Brahmanism and the Upanishads, and there's a whole different way of looking at the world there. So for me to even comment on something like Kundalini, it's just a different paradigm, So I guess what I could say is that we're talking about some feeling that arises and some concepts surrounding that feeling. So the feeling is a feeling, the concepts are thoughts, and those are experiences, and you should be mindful of them and let them go. See that they're impermanent, suffering, and non-self. Don't cling to them. That's all the questions for tonight. Thank you all for coming out.